Hello everyone, hello my little dyslexia community. Norda is here and welcome a new episode of Real Talk with Norda. Today my dear guest is Theo. He is 22 years old and he's from UK. He was diagnosed with dyslexia at the age of 6. His biggest support was his mom, and he was motivated and inspired by his role model Tony Robbins and exploring internet. Right now, he's English teacher in Thailand. His hobbies are exercises, personal growth, dyslexia, animals, and psychology. His plans for the future: he wants to revolutionize the dyslexia industry. And that's it. Welcome, Theo. How are you?
I'm doing really, really well, Norda. I'm grateful.
Thank you. Shall we start with my questions for you and with Real Talk with Norda? Are you ready? Okay. My first question for you is dyslexia and your school time. Like, what kind of difficulties did you had? And yes, we can start with that.
Yes, the difficulties I really had at the very start, before I got diagnosed with dyslexia, it was like seeing the teachers write down symbols on the board, like a C, A, T, and different letters, and the letters had sounds. I thought, okay, that's cool. But then when we started putting them together and the other kids were understanding them and making words and then reading books, making sentences,
yes,
I was still stuck making the sounds and trying to figure out why this sound makes that sound. So at the start, it was a lot of confusion. And my big imagination, I remember just like being in the middle of a class, pretend I was in a war zone or in land with the flick of my fingers. So it's a lot spent daydreaming as well as being confused.
Did you ever get bullied because of your dyslexia?
At the start, I didn't so much get bullied. Mm-hmm. People may have made fun of me at certain things, but because I was a very big kid very early on, I think my coping strategy was I felt like in my head, I basically didn't have any friends because I felt like I wanted to bully everyone else for their chance to bully me. But I want to hurt other people and be a class clown to avoid the fact that I can't read or write.
Yes, and did you ever struggle with your mental health? And today, how do you stay motivated?
I would say back then, this is very early on, there's loads of doctors' reports and things like that of me not being able to sleep and having stomach with my head down all the time. I remember my grandparents said to me, like, if you keep putting your head like that, it will stay like that, because I was always slouched. And this was very early on. But I'm saying now, my mental health is better than it's ever been because I understand how to work it. Yes. I think mental health is the same as physical health. You can have good physical health or bad physical health. I've had good mental health or bad. The only way you've got to work on it is you've got to train it. You've got to condition it on a daily basis. And that's the understanding I took from it. And just keep on working on it.
Yes, really, mental health is like really important because when you have dyslexia, dyslexia really hits your mental health, and we need to learn how to fight against that, against negative emotions. And what do you think, why such a negative perception around dyslexia in our society?
It's all because of how it's brought up. Like dyslexia means, like the definition in Greek is the problem with the words. Yes. And it was found out because people couldn't do things that they apparently could be able to do. Yes. So it was invented, like the word dyslexics and our brain has always been around in humans forever. But the word dyslexia is only got invented to explain why people couldn't do something. Yes. So for the last 130 years plus, people have seen dyslexia as a negative. People have seen dyslexia as this negative thing of what they can't do. But it's only recently when we really sort of looked at dyslexia from the whole view. It's like not just like it's like looking at, instead of us looking at one jigsaw piece or one little part of the picture, taking a step back and looking at it from a whole. Looking, okay, here's the weaknesses, and here's also the inherent strengths that dyslexics have. Yes. And because I would say people have a bad view because of the way that dyslexia has been brought up in history. If dyslexia was brought up by the truth about what is dyslexia, a different way of the brain wiring, and we had all the information at the front, people would have realized it's a gift, or it's this thing at strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, that's what I want to say about it.
Yes, and what do you think? What we need to do to change that negative like perception around dyslexia?
There's two things. The people we can, us ourselves as dyslexics, we can one, look to educate others.
Yes.
And when we look to educate others, it's not by calling people like have got the bad view of dyslexia. I know there's a very low percentage, something like less than 20% of in the UK had teachers know about dyslexia or think it's a real thing. And these amazing negative statistics. Don't look at it thinking these people are bad. And when people make fun of you, because it's because of ignorance, they don't understand.
Yes.
Look as a person to educate. You may be annoyed, you may be emotional, but use it as be an example, like Richard Branson, like Tom Cruise, and like all these famous dyslexics out there. There's 40% of all self-made millionaires are dyslexic. 30% of all entrepreneurs are dyslexic. Half the people who work at NASA are dyslexic. Be an example, be an example by what about dyslexia. Using an example about what someone can do, and then you'll be another statistic about why dyslexia is a gift.
Yes, and could you tell me, because you are now teacher in Thailand, and could you tell me how do you deal with your dyslexia now as teacher, and how dyslexia influence on your job?
Right now, it's all down to coping strategies. It's really funny here, because in order to get rid of the weaknesses as much as possible, you have to see them before they happen. You mean see them in advance. But how things work here is that there's nothing planned. People tell you an hour before you have to do something, and things are very, very last minute. People don't make a lot of long-term decisions here. So finding solutions around my problems is very, very hard. A lot of times I act, because here I'm the only foreign person here. The English teacher doesn't speak very fluent. So how I'm dealing with it is obviously if I create a lesson plan, I get it to someone else, another human being to track. But another thing I do is I act so confident. When I misspell something and then I go, oh, that's misspelled. I go onto my phone, I speak it into Siri, it says it out, and then I'm like, okay, this is how you spell it. I act confident in my approach. And if you act confident in your approach, the 9 times out of 10 people won't look twice. But if you're unconfident in your approach, then people will look, do you mean he's unsure of himself? Because a lot of times you have to act confident before you actually are, and that's what I do a lot of times.
Yes, and if you don't have confidence when you work something, you become scared and you make more mistakes. Yes, confidence is really important. That's your some tips and tricks in your everyday life with your dyslexia. Some of them with organization, learning, or those things. Few of them.
Okay, so the biggest thing got to start off with is organization. You have to be organized. You have to know your priorities. And for me, my whole room can be in a mess. My whole house can be in disarray. But as long as I've got my priorities and my little planner done, I feel so organized in my head. And having an organizational strategy, planning your day, the day in advance, and getting up, looking over your plan and maybe rewriting it. And it's all about having a system. For example, you plan your day, write down the more important things you have to do and doing them. And be careful though, because time management is an issue for dyslexics. Just do a list of things you've got to do and do them. It's not about, okay, this takes 10 minutes, because you are going to allocate such little time for such a big job. And that's a natural one. I've spent years doing that. That's the first thing. The second thing is basically like I said before, encountering the problems before they happen and having solutions to them. It depends like what you have to do for your job, what you have to do for traveling, what you have to do for certain strategy. Like there was an app for it as a thing that can do my route, and I just have to look at it and it's really easy.
Yes.
Then once you have a strategy, things become easy. And for dyslexics, reading, writing, organization are the big challenges to do. And for like with reading and with writing, reading becomes very, very easy. You have to get anything on a device, either a phone or a laptop, and get it to read back. You can do that on Word, you can do that in Google. There's a lot of different places to do that completely for free. You don't need to download this expensive software. They can do things for free.
Yes.
And I would recommend getting on a computer, not getting a reading pen, because I've tried those and they're quite hard personally.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say get them on a computer. And if you want to write something, write it down and use Grammarly to spell correct it. And then for a third thing, get it to read back to you, because there's some words that spelt the same, like they sound the same but spelt different. And then finally, give it to an actual human being to spell correct and edit, depending on your severity of dyslexia. For me, and then you just that's the kind of like the basics of it. But the main thing is anticipating problems, creating strategies for problems, and not letting it stop you.
Yes, yes, and when you said that thing with Grammarly and with like spell checker, yep. I use spell checker, and yep. I use Google spell checker. They have like free one on mail, and I use in my language Croatian and in English, and it's a really good thing when I write some essays for school or when I write mail to someone in English. It's much easier because I use that spell checker, and I'm not so scared about my mistakes. And could you yes, it's good. Technology is really good for us dyslexics. And could you tell me your attitude now? How do you stand with your dyslexia now? How do you deal with that? And yes.
I love it. Like, it's been a long journey of working on it and being very obsessed on it. And I remember since I was 17 years old, realizing that how I improved it massively. Like having little to no help, but yet still improving my English ability 500% more. Compared to in 1 year, compared to 8 years having no help, having all the help in the world, and having my own journey with it, and like thinking, okay, I want to help other people. And doing that, I've really worked on myself a lot and helping myself and overcoming these obstacles. And like I'm in now Thailand teaching English. Never believe I'll do that in a million years. Diagnosed one of the worst dyslexics in England, went for a whole journey about that. My dyslexic school didn't think they could accept me because I was too severe. And having all these massive obstacles, but my attitude now is I can do anything I want with enough work, with enough effort, because like now is the best time to be dyslexic because of the support out. The more technology is coming in, and all these things are just going to get easier and easier and easier for us. And the fact is, because I understand this, what stops us isn't that our dyslexia, it's our mindset. It's what you say, our emotions. Yes. Those are the things that really stop us from taking action. And of course, there's days I don't feel like it. Of course, there's days I'm lazy. Of course, there's days I'm hard on myself. But we have to dealing with ourselves, dealing with our own mind, accepting our downfalls and working on them and getting up every time you fall down and keep on working. Yes. Makes you become a stronger person. Yes. And realizing the only person you're battling is yourself. You're not battling against your dyslexia. You're battling against your mindset. And once I realized that, things become so much more simpler. The game becomes easier to win. So that's how I feel like I'm doing amazing now for myself. Like there's nothing I can't overcome. You know what I mean? Because you just got to like know your strengths and weaknesses or work on them. And when things get too hard, build relationships around other people. They can get them to help you. Yes. And you just move on.
Yes. Yes, it's really important what you said, that part about mindset. Mindset is really important for us, and we create our thoughts about ourselves, about our dyslexia. And if we have positive thoughts, and when you have some problem, you need to find solution, don't live in that problem. Just keep going and find a solution for that. So yes, mindset is really important for us.
Everything.
And could you share with us your dyslexia strengths and your dyslexia weaknesses?
So my weaknesses, biggest one, organization. Time management, writing is awful. I have bad articulation when I'm talking. Spelling's really bad. And I can put things down. Like what annoys me more than anything now is the fact that I lose things. What can really get me emotional some days is when I'm going through really long days and I just forget the most stupidest thing. Like I put something down, it takes me half an hour to find it, and I'm late from work.
Same.
And all these annoying things, especially when people are around me. Like, especially when I spend half an hour looking for something, and another person comes in and say, "Oh, it's there. I'm looking for my keys." Someone else just picks it up, and I've been looking for that.
Yes.
And people laugh, and I get emotional. It's like thinking this happens multiple times a day, and it's so stressful because that's like the things that people don't see. Is that like the fact that I could just lose things so easily? Sorry.
Yes, it's same for me. Like, to spend so many times to find something, and then someone is like, here it is, like is in front of you and you don't see. Yes, and that's so annoying. Like, oh my god. And could you share with us your strengths? So my strengths, I would say strengths, I'm very I would say strong verbally. I'm good at understanding big ideas, big concepts, like concepts, and really having a vision and a thing forward. And I like taking a step back and seeing things how work all together. And I can get like one metaphor and understand how things work in a big generalization. And I feel I'm very good at making connections between seamlessly unrelated objects. Like, for example, seeing how one thing works in science to another thing, or how I could use something else for this, and how things work like that. And I think those are my strengths, and I feel I'm very, very good at understanding people. I don't know how it was. I'm always been so fascinated about how people work and operate. Same.
And over time, you're doing research into it and like finding out things. So I feel I'm very good at judging people out. Anyway, I feel like that's also one of my strengths, like what you have as well, is understanding other people.
Yes, and my last question for you is, could you share your message to our dyslexia community? What do you think, what is really important for us dyslexics?
Realize the journey you're on, and to have certain understanding and certain things. It's like you're on this journey of understanding more about dyslexia, more about yourself. And it's more of a self journey than it is understanding about dyslexia. Because there's two sides to this. There's two games you're playing. One, you're trying to understand more about dyslexia. Two, you're trying to understand more about yourself.
Yes.
And understanding yourself, understanding like what you say, your emotions, and about what your beliefs, that is so much more valuable. Understanding how this works. How does your brain work? What are the beliefs that you have that operate things, and how much power that has over you? Once you understand that, it's so critical.
Yes.
And like the biggest thing I want to leave is making the biggest thing I can do is that I always used to say that every person with dyslexia makes two fundamental decisions, and it massively dictates their life. It's that one, they can either let their dyslexia use them, or they can decide to use their dyslexia.
Yes.
And another much more simple way of putting this is having foundational belief, and this belief has basically helped me being diagnosed with my most severe dyslexics in England, to be able to spend 3 years writing a book, to be able to actually teach kids in another country, being paid as a job, teach kids English, is this: do not let dyslexia stop you. As simple as that. Do not let dyslexia stop you. Having a negative, full stop. You do whatever it takes to not let that stop you. Is that easier said than done? Then yes. But how do you do that? You've worked on the first small thing at a time. For a small thing, and once you overcome that obstacle, you do another thing. And how you work on that is just you get so focused on it You don't want this thing to negatively impact your life. And one other critical understanding that is so unbelievably important for people with dyslexia to know is this. It's that the worst thing about your dyslexia is not the challenges with reading and writing. The worst thing is about dyslexia is what you believe about yourself and what you believe about your dyslexia. Because that's what you mean, like, Norda, I know you agree this because you've been through your own journey and you want to understand this.
Yes.
This is what they get wrong about the dyslexic industry and what the dyslexic community. And I'm not saying anything negative about it, but they focus more on like reading and writing side of dyslexia and try to help with that and not the emotional, beliefs. But once you realize and once you can work on yourself and realize, okay, here are my negative beliefs about myself, and I want to get over them, because this is so true. If you believe you can and you believe you can't, you're both right.
Yes, and yes, I totally agree. We are just concentrate on those things like reading, writing, spelling, but dyslexia is more than that. Dyslexia is like a whole life of one person and one family, one like society group. So it's really important not just to be concentrate of those like difficulties, but also care about emotional part, mental part. And yes, that is really important. And dear Theo, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for being here. I wish you all the best, a lot of success, and I hope that your plans will come true. And you, my dear dyslexia community, don't forget to stay positive and keep going, and see you in some other episode of Real Talk with Norda. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you, Norda. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.